the reality of autistic individuals having this hyperarousal, this hyperreactivity, and I'm interested in that because I'm interested in emotions and how people perceive emotions and individual differences in emotion perception. And I've done some study with Professor Tanaka. I took his course on facial recognition, and that's one of the themes we touched on was autism and face recognition, recognition of facial emotions and things like that. And that kind of ties into what you were talking about with respect to the hyperarousal. I think one of the hypotheses, I think this might be Professor Tanaka's hypothesis, is this gaze aversion hypothesis that looking at someone in the face and in the eyes leads to hyperarousal in the amygdala and in that the primitive brain core, and therefore that's why they have an aversive tendency to look away from people. I find that pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I do as well. And I actually co-authored like an encyclopedia entry with Jim Tanaka about exactly that issue. And it gets back again to that nature nurture thing, which, by the way, in developmental psychology, we just sort of gave up. We argued and argued and argued about that for decades and decades and decades, got nowhere, and then decided that it was just a stupid argument and that we should accept that both of them are probably involved to some extent in everything and have complex interactions. And that's where we got neuroconstructivism, and things have been much more sensible since we stopped having that silly argument. But getting back to face processing, and there is it seems definitely some aversion to eye contact in older autistic individuals. As you say, that's been shown. You can see hyperreactivity in the brain when you're putting people in like an fMRI scanner, and you're looking at their reaction to eye contact. But interestingly, it's hard to see so much evidence of that in younger children, and partly that's just because it's harder to figure that out. You can't really ask these young children; they're like infants and toddlers, so it's harder to get them to describe what's going through their heads. It's also hard to get them to sit still in an MRI scanner because these things are noisy, and you have to sit absolutely still. So you can't really scan young kids except with a sleep scan. And if they're asleep, they can't see faces or eye contact. So you can't do that study. But with the things that we can do, it's been hard to get sort of a clear evidence that people are finding that aversive early on. And one of the hypotheses that has been advanced for that is that it's not aversive early on, but that as a result of all these negative social experiences, people start to find it aversive later on, which, we don't know that for sure. Again, we don't know what's going through the heads of these young people, but if that is true, that'd just be one more example of that complex nature nurture stuff.